Welcome to Hope Natural Health, the podcast inspiring you to be your best version. Join me, your host, Dr. Erin, naturopathic doctor, dog mom, cancer survivor, and girl boss weekly as we discuss all things health, hormones, and happiness with a little side of this thing called life. Welcome back to the Hope and Natural Health podcast, where I try to get you healthy the right way. Last week's episode was all about migraines, and this week I'm excited to have a special guest with us. I have Morgan Adams here, who is a holistic sleep coach for women who struggle with getting a good night's sleep consistently. Her goal is to help women feel better and live better, and the key to both begins with a good night's sleep. Morgan is an accredited health coach with additional advanced certifications in sleep science. She's a sought-after podcast guest and expert for websites like Mind Body Green. Morgan is a former insomniac. She spent almost a decade using prescription sleeping pills, despite knowing that her overall sleep quality suffered. Morgan now inspires and teaches other women how to confidently, calmly, and effectively get a good night's sleep without the use of sleep aids. Morgan is also a 2-time breast cancer survivor. She advocates for a lifestyle of disease prevention and integrating holistic strategies for cancer treatment. She currently lives in Richmond, Virginia with her husband, dog Ollie, who is a shaggy 15-pound mess of love. Well, we connected on so many levels with your bio as both cancer survivors. I fortunately have never struggled with sleep. I love sleep, but I know how important sleep is for overall health, and I'm so excited to have you on the show here, Morgan.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and chat about all things sleep, Erin.
Good. Well, first, before we dive into, things about all about sleep, tell me about your background and really how you started this current work.
Yeah, well, my career path sort of has gone in many different directions. The really brief version of it is I started off in social work, then went to pharmaceutical sales, then went to healthcare marketing and communications. And I landed on sleep coaching. I decided to be a sleep coach 2 years ago. And the reason that sort of came to pass is because in March of 2020, I started having some sleep issues. And prior to that, about 10 years before that or so, I had insomnia, which you kind of mentioned in the bio. And I got very concerned with this new sleep issue right in the beginning of the pandemic and really wanted to get ahead of it. I did not want to go down that road of insomnia. So I started doing things to optimize my sleep. I was just doing a lot of research. I bought an Oura ring to track my sleep. And I started doing all these different experiments, and I started to organically share them on social media. And I come to find out that a lot of other people in my circle were struggling with sleep as well during this crazy time in the early days of the pandemic. And I just continued to share. And then it was probably 2 summers ago that I had a revelation that I needed to become a sleep coach for women. I have for quite a few years, probably almost 4 years after my first breast cancer diagnosis, really felt compelled to do something in health, but I really just didn't know what that was going to be. I explored maybe becoming a cancer coach. That was too heavy, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And when I figured out the whole sleep coaching thing, I was like, Eureka, I found it. So at that point, I just needed to figure out how to, do it, to do the thing, to figure out, the coursework. So I spent a year taking courses and studying and just really delving deep. And last summer, I launched my sleep coaching practice for women. So that is sort of my little timeline on how I arrived to where I am now.
Oh, that's wonderful. I was going to comment on something that you said in there. Oh, I didn't realize that it was so recent that this all came about. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a pretty recent thing, but it's been a whirlwind.
Yeah, well, good for you. That's exciting. And I know that it's amazing when you put something out on social media, the amount of response you get for something that you didn't really understand was such a big problem, that it really is a big problem. And you're like, holy cow, like this is insane. And it just gives you like so much passion and excitement to really help people, because there's so many women who are suffering from so many things that they don't need to. And I know sleep is a big one. And really it's like kind of a foundation of health that we need to have in check before anything else can come into place. So super
Absolutely.
excited for this conversation. So we'll start off by telling me a little bit more about kind of like what it means to have training in sleep coaching. Like what makes you qualified to help coach women with sleep?
Yeah, well, I kind of did this. It's a little bit difficult to become a sleep coach because honestly, it's kind of a new field, and we have probably right now 350,000 fitness coaches, about 70,000 nutrition coaches, and we don't know yet how many sleep coaches we have. So it's sort of an emerging field. And what I did to get started was I enrolled in a general health coaching program called IIN, which is Integrative Institute for Nutrition. It's a pretty well-known program, but I would say they're like a generalist kind of program. So to get more specific into sleep, I took, I think, 3 courses, certifications on sleep itself. And what I learned in those, I mean, I learned somewhat different things in each, but if I had to sum it up, I learned how to coach people to modify their behaviors related to sleep, provide accountability, lifestyle recommendations. And then another thing that's very important in the field of sleep coaching, which I think definitely needs to be addressed, is the fact that we as sleep coaches are able to screen for other sleep disorders. So we don't diagnose other sleep disorders, but when we gather our information in the beginning stages, we ideally should be able to refer people on who are really out of our scope of practice. So most likely for me that I've encountered, it's like mainly sleep apnea. I mean, there's others more, there's other serious sleep disorders, but sleep apnea is one that I definitely have to refer out to because it's just beyond my scope. And unfortunately, it's just very prevalent with women in midlife. So it is an interesting field because we're not sleep doctors. We have a little bit more specificity than health coaches, and we do have that ability to refer. So I've built up a really nice referral network of other providers who I can rely on if a client needs extra attention.
Oh, awesome. That's wonderful. Yeah, it's I see, considerations of sleep apnea all the time, and I even refer out to that because I don't have the ability to test for that, or, it's not really in my scope to do that. So good thing to refer out to. But I'm sure, like me, you can kind of suspect, possibly that's going on and say, hey, you should probably, let's rule this out first before anything else. So. And it's really prevalent. I know you said it's more common in women later on in life. Can you explain, do you have any knowledge as to why that is?
Well, just on a very broad brush strokes, it's, somewhat hormonal. Sometimes in midlife, women can put on weight. And when you have extra weight, especially around your neck, that can kind of impact your propensity to get sleep apnea. But it's, I'm learning a little bit more about it, mainly though in the screening process, not so much in the treatment or the etiology of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why do you think so many women suffer from poor sleep and insomnia and all of these disturbances, and they're up all night, or they can't go to bed, or...
Yeah, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
There was a 2022 survey from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and they shared that women are 1.5 times more likely than men to rarely or never wake up feeling rested, which is huge.
Crazy.
67% of women report frequent sleep issues, and 10% of women have chronic insomnia. And so when you look at a few of the main reasons why women suffer from sleep problems and insomnia, number one is sort of kind of an obvious. It's the hormonal fluctuations beginning from adolescence all the way up through their lives. The second is mood disorders. Women are generally more prone to having anxiety and depression, which can actually leave you more vulnerable to sleep disorders. And then the third is the overlap of caregiver responsibilities and work. So for example, particularly with women in midlife, have you ever heard of the sandwich generation phrase?
Yeah.
So it's essentially a woman in midlife who is potentially having kids at home, also aging parents that she's caring for, and she's also juggling a demanding career. And so all of these roles are kind of closing in on her. And so that can also make a woman very vulnerable to sleep issues as well. So as I mentioned, especially midlife women, perimenopausal and menopausal women, about half of those women have sleep problems. They're dealing with hot flashes and early morning awakenings and racing mind. And then, like we mentioned earlier, spikes in obstructive sleep apnea, which can cause nighttime awakenings, trips to the bathroom, things like that, just disrupted sleep overall.
Yeah, nope, those are all legit reasons. So if someone is listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, that's me, and then they, they stumble upon your website and they want to start working with you, can you walk us through a little bit about what it's like to work with you, and what do you start with, and then what do you do? Maybe share a few tips and tricks on to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, well, what I do is I have a one-to-one coaching program, and we meet 6 times over Zoom, so I can see people wherever they live, which is great.
Yeah.
And I do a very thorough screening during our first session. It's more of a medical, it's kind of like going to the doctor for the first time for your first visit. Lots of medical questions and questions about sleep. And based on that information, I, kind of figure out what the main issues are. And then from there, we just chip away. And I like to definitely, work on behavioral issues. So if somebody has habits that are, keeping them up at night, we really try to work on those. There's a big accountability piece as well. And then there's support in between visits so that they feel like if they're getting stuck in between visits, that they have somebody to talk to. So, I really don't have a cookie cutter approach.
Right.
Every person is different, which I think is the beauty of the coaching process at this point. So generally, my female population has ranged from late 20s to, I think I had a client recently who's 69. So most of those women land out in the midlife years is what I'm finding. And a lot of those midlife women have, a fair amount of anxiety. So we work on strategies to incorporate mindfulness so that they are becoming more grounded during the day, and that kind of rolls on into the evening. So yeah, lots and lots of different things that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's very similar to what I do. Naturopathically, it's it's not a cookie cutter approach. Every patient's different. I wanted to circle back to a couple of things you said. Well, one, I remembered I had a question about the top 3 reasons why you think, many women suffer from sleep. So when you do your assessment and dive in to figure out the causes, are you finding it's, one of these is more common than the other, or are you finding that maybe it's more of a combination of a few of them? What has your experience been in those issues?
Yeah, I'm finding kind of a mixed bag, but more often than not, and it could be just sort of the time that we're in right now, but I'm finding a lot of women have anxious minds, racing thoughts at night. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing recently has been on just getting more settled, more grounded. And that starts during the morning. We have this, thing about evening routines, and I love a good evening routine, but really good sleep starts in the second you wake up. It's an all day long process. So you can't, treat your body like crap during the day and then an hour before bed start doing all the things and expect a good night's sleep. You really it's really kind of an ongoing practice that I feel like, that sometimes people don't quite grasp that fact, but
right.
It's really important. It's really important. That morning is very important.
Yeah, so that's super. I mean, that was really interesting and eye-opening for me. It's what? It does start from the minute you wake up, and how many women out there, grabbing for their phones right away and checking their email and maybe triggering themselves right off the bat, and then they just set their whole day off into a tizzy from not really having established, grounding techniques in the morning or
Yes.
a good routine. So very good. I mean, but obviously you also mentioned when we were talking about when a patient or a client would start working with you that, their habits before bed. So can you touch a little bit about that, about some, maybe not so healthy habits before bed that you've seen that are, I know plenty. I have an Oura Ring too. So I've learned so much through the Oura Ring with my own sleep, but can you touch on a few, not so good habits to have? I know it starts in the morning, but.
Yeah. Well, if we kind of look at like the evening time, things that I really try to make sure that people are looking out for is cutting things off a few hours before bed, like sort of just decompressing, stopping their work, stopping stimulating activities before, like, a couple hours before bed. Dimming the lights is really important. Start dimming your lights a few hours before bed. Also, lowering the temperature is really important too, because your body needs to cool down by like 2 to 3 degrees to initiate sleep and to stay asleep. So the really good temperature for sleeping tends to hover somewhere around 65, 67 degrees. So making sure those conditions are met. Also, really paying attention to what you consume. So I really try to work with my clients on identifying alcohol and caffeine curfews, because it's so easy to just let things slide. So caffeine has a quarter life of like 10 to 12 hours. So if you had a cup of coffee, like at 2:00, for example, in the afternoon, that coffee could be in your system by the time you go to bed.
Right.
So I really like to, and obviously, this as a doctor, everyone has different abilities to process caffeine. It's a genetic thing. So if we don't know their genetics, what I'm usually telling them to consider is, keep a caffeine curfew of maybe like 11:00 a.m. or noon, right? Like not having any caffeine after that time. And then a really big one right now, especially over the past couple of years, has been alcohol at night. People have, this is nothing new, but people are definitely relying on decompressing with a glass of wine. I know I've been guilty of it, and no shame,
right.
but if you think about the alcohol before bed, it really can, it does put you to sleep faster. But the downside is that it impacts your REM sleep, which is the sleep stage responsible for memory consolidation and emotional regulation. So it's cutting into your REM sleep. It's making your sleep more fragmented, so you could potentially wake up a few hours into your sleep. So what I recommend for clients who really do want to have a glass of wine is to think more of like happy hour versus a nightcap. So have that glass of wine, around 5, or maybe even earlier if they can. I know that seems like the general window of having that alcohol cut off is about 3 hours before bed. But I honestly, just from my own experimentation, feel like it should be maybe, if possible, 4 to 5 hours before bed. I've done all these different Oura experiments, with drinking wine at certain times, and my scores are much better if I have, if I stop drinking wine at like 5 o'clock, maybe I have a glass of wine at 4 and sip on it for an hour, and then it's not really impacting my sleep tremendously. So you just have to kind of be mindful. I know a lot of people, when they go out and they want to socialize, have dinner and drinks, like if you're out to dinner at 8 and you're drinking, like it really probably is going to ruin your sleep. So
I always call it fake sleep. Like you sleep, but I never feel rest, even if I've only had, a drink or two, not to the point of inebriation, but I never feel rested. And that's, a good point. It's like, it's fake sleep. And then you're also limiting your ability, or your body's ability, to do what it really needs to do, because now your liver's, trying to process this alcohol too, in addition to everything else that your body's trying to do when you sleep. So very, very good advice there. I have one question about, because I get this a lot in my practice, because I, mainly help women with their hormones. But what do you suggest for that mom that is like the sandwich effect, doing all of the things, and literally like after the kids go to bed, that's their only time to get work done? And I know that that's affecting their sleep. So do you have any tips for that mom or that woman that's like that? That's like, that's the only time I can get anything done.
I definitely heard that before. Well, the advice I would give to somebody like that is prioritize time during the day for the things that you want and need to do. Because what ends up happening, and there's actually a term for this, it's called momsomnia, or revenge bedtime procrastination. So
I love
this
that.
This is very typical. Now, I did not make those terms up, but it's very typical for moms to put their kids to bed and then be like, whew, I can do what I want, right?
Yep.
I can like watch TV and da da da. And I think really what the main thing to think about is the importance of prioritizing your sleep. It's just reminding yourself of the fact that you really want to get to bed at your reasonable bedtime. You want to feel good the next day. You don't want, because what happens is you get into the cycle, and it just keeps continuing. So one very actionable thing that people can do, or a couple actionable things they can do, is set an alarm on their phone for beginning their bedtime routine. Like it will be their alarm to like turn off their TV or to, start winding down, whatever their wind down routine is going to be. And then another thing is, if they're a TV watcher and they're watching, Netflix, is to cut off that auto play so that one episode doesn't roll right into the other. Because I've fallen prey to that a couple times where I'm like really into a show and then it goes right into the next episode. And I'm like, crap, I promised myself I'd be in bed at 10 o'clock,
right?
10 p.m. So those are just a few things, but I think, really trying to look at your day. It's a lot of it is time management, quite honestly, is looking at your day, figuring out like, where can I fit in like 2 small pockets of time during the day where I can take care of myself, where I can take a walk, where I can do some meditation or some breath work to really like just get their brain more calm overall.
Good tips.
Yeah.
I know there's plenty of moms, tons of moms out there that suffer from that. Also, I know you talked about avoiding, lights and dimming the lights. Can you touch a little bit more on like the science behind that, and if you recommend, blue light blocking eyewear at night or even like throughout the day? I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah. Well, there are definitely studies showing that the blue light at night can affect your melatonin, and you need that melatonin a couple hours before bed to signal to your brain that it's time to sleep. So I recommend dimming the lights as a first start. I actually do like blue blocking glasses at night. So I start wearing them probably around dinner time. I actually have a pair. It's kind of interesting that it's one pair that has like magnets that clip on, magnetic lenses.
Oh, cool.
So there's sort of an orange lens that I clip on, around dinner time. And then there's a red lens that I clip on later in the evening. Now I do something a little unusual and I've actually done a reel about this on Instagram, but I do wear these blue blocking glasses with the red shades at night while I watch TV. And it really does not impact me at all. I think the reason why it doesn't is because I've got the glasses on, and also because I am physically fairly far away from the TV. So if and I kind of even did like a poll about this on Instagram. A lot of people actually do like to watch TV before bed. And sometimes they feel guilty that that they're doing it because it's like, they're not supposed to be in front of the screen.
Right.
But, if personally watching some light content on TV relaxes me. Yeah. So I don't mind that. So I think it's, sometimes we can find ourselves in this mindset of these hard, fast, like quote, sleep hygiene rules. And, if you are watching TV before bed and you're not having any problems, like I wouldn't worry about it. But I think it's to be safe, just to give yourself a little extra protection. I think wearing a pair of blue light blocking glasses is always a good idea at night, but also dimming the lights. If you have overhead lights, I would turn those off and I would turn on some table lamps that emit less light.
Right.
So, just be mindful, because sometimes, people blast those LED, ceiling lights 24/7.
Oh yeah.
You're throughout the day, you really should see your light intake kind of change, over the course of
Right.
the day.
Right.
So, yeah.
Do you have any information on how light affects deep sleep? Because there's the different phases of sleep, like the light, the REM, the deep, and we really want to get mainly REM and deep, correct?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And this is probably a topic for another podcast, but the only reason why I'm fascinated with this is because of the Aura Ring. And for anyone that's listening, I'll put the website on how you can find an Aura Ring in the show notes. But it's been fascinating and learning about my own habits. And so you won't know what's being affected until you actually like track things. So you don't need an Aura Ring. There's other devices too, but that's just the one I have. But do you have is there any correlation between light and deep sleep? Like I struggle to get deep sleep and I cannot figure out why.
Yeah. Well, there's lots and lots of reasons why your deep sleep could be impacted, but there was a study that was published, probably in March of 2022, where they showed that just a minuscule amount of light in somebody's bedroom while they were sleeping was impacting their deep sleep. Now, that's not super surprising, but what they actually found surprising was that there's some potential for it to impact your cardiovascular and metabolic health as well. So I believe that they found, let's see, I can't remember the exact specifications of the study, but it was some cardiovascular and metabolic impacts. I think blood glucose was affected. And so that was a little bit shocking. So this study got shared around pretty widely. And the recommendation was really to just make sure that your bedroom is pitch dark. So like any light should be definitely off. If you don't have blackout curtains, those can be a little pricey, but there's some at different price points. At least have a really good eye mask that blocks out all the light. Also, if you have any electronics in the bedroom that have blinking lights, either take them away or put some kind of electrical tape on them. I know that I sleep with an air filter in my bedroom because I want that pure air in my bedroom, so I'm not about to take the air doctor out.
Right.
So what I do is I put these, they're called True Light dots. They're from the True Light website. And essentially it's just like a packet of little stickers that you can stick on your electronic devices when they emit a light. So pro tip, I actually keep some of those in my suitcase too, because when I'm traveling like to an Airbnb or a hotel, like you literally don't know what the room is going to be like. I mean, they've got like alarms and fire alarms and this and that and the other, and you can't really dismantle those. You can't really take away their electronics because it's not your house. Yeah. So just putting those little dots over those lights can be really helpful if those bother you at night.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I sleep with an eye mask. It's game changing.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really great thing. Yeah, and I actually keep that as well with those little stickers in my overnight bag, so that I never forget. Because there have been times when I've stayed in an Airbnb and there was like hardly any shades on the windows. They were really flimsy, transparent shades, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stand the lights coming in from the street. And so the eye mask is a game changer. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we could jam on sleep for hours because it's so important and there's so much to talk about. But hopefully this shared, with the audience some, basic things about sleep and then more importantly, how you can help. So I'm going to ask one final question that I ask all of my podcast guests. What is your favorite or best health tip that you can share?
Okay. So to make this brief, my best health tip and sleep tip is to get up in the morning and get sunlight within the first hour of waking up. And when I say get in the sun, don't have your sunglasses on because your eyes actually need to see the sun, because when your eyes see the sun, it triggers a response in your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is like your circadian pacemaker, which sends off this trigger cascade to regulate your hormones throughout the day. So I have found that extremely useful for myself, and a lot of my other clients have as well. And it's very simple. Just get outside, preferably, take a walk if the weather permits, and have that sunlight in your eyes for about 15 minutes at least in the morning, preferably before 9 a.m. It really makes a huge difference.
What happens in the winter when you get up so early and it's still dark out for hours? Any
Good
tips
question.
there?
Well, yeah. So I'm a 5 a.m. riser. I'm an early bird.
Yep, me too.
And so what I do when I wake up is I place this, it's called a happy light. There are many different brands. I use a brand called Verilux Happy Light. And you just basically need to have at least 10,000 lux in your light, and just sit, with it, like a foot from your face at an angle, and sit in front of that light for about a half an hour. And that gives you, it's sort of like a second best substitute for the sunlight. If you can't make it, if you're an early person or it's dark, or you live in a place where the sun doesn't come out until much later.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out. I'll put that in the show notes as well. But oh my gosh, Morgan, this has been so fun. I'm so excited that you were here and that we connected and that you were able to be on the podcast. All of Morgan's information will be in the show notes, and she has her one-to-one holistic sleep coaching program for women called My Sleep Makeover. So you can find that on her website. But again, thank you so much for being here, Morgan.
Thank you, Erin. It's nice to talk to you.
Nice talking to you too. And we will see you all next week.